Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and today I'm joined by believing, believing Bruce. How you doing today, Bruce?
I am good, much better for seeing you, Anthony. We're really looking forward to this, mate. So I'm expecting big things, and I know I've got big shoes to fill on the heels of Elliot Hackney and Lawrence as well from the True Geordie podcast.
I, I'm sure, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you're gonna do okay, right?
Fingers crossed.
So what is it like where you are right now? Cause in Birmingham, they put more regulations in and COVID.
Yeah.
So is it the same thing where you are?
Yeah, it is. It is. I think Newcastle, or at least the northeast, Anthony, from what I'm aware of, Newcastle in the northeast was one of the first places last week to go back into local lockdown, in England at least. Or that's my belief as I'm talking to you here. And to be fair, because I'm not a big drinker, or I used to be a raver back in the day, but I'm no longer into the rave scene. So these pubs shutting at 10 o'clock and all that type of stuff, it doesn't really affect us, So, I mean, I work by myself. I've got other people who work with me, but they're in their own locations around the UK. And I'm not a big drinker, so the pub shutting at 10 o'clock doesn't really impact me. But I'm hearing that it's been quite impactful. Obviously, it's a very emotional subject as well. But yeah, in answer to your question, I can't see there being much difference up here in Newcastle. But that's maybe just a boring individual who just stays in with the kids all the time.
Luckily for me, it hasn't really affected me because I don't drink anyway. So luckily, it hasn't bothered me that much.
Yeah, good. I'm pleased. See, you're from Birmingham, are you?
Yeah.
Ah, right, okay. So, are you a City fan or not?
To be honest, my fam my family support Villa, but I'm not really a diehard Villa fan.
Good. And like I say, although I'm from Newcastle, I'm not a really big football fan. Obviously, I know True Geordie is, but I'm not a big football fan. I'm more into the boxing, and I'm pleased, Anthony. I'm pleased I'm not a big football fan because we're terrible up here. So it saves me a lot of heartache.
It's the same thing with the Villa, like because other side they're not that good, so it's nothing to really get upset about when they lose or they don't perform very
Yeah.
well. But, but anyway, you 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 are you I would say you're pretty much an expert on body language. I like psychology and things like that. So how did you get into that sort of thing?
Okay, good question. So this takes me right back. I'm recollecting memories here, Anthony. Going right back to my childhood. Is I've always been interested in people. Always been interested in people, even from an early age. And as well as growing up, so I grew up on a council estate in Newcastle, and it was you either if you were a boy you played football or you went to the boxing club. So I done those two things, and I wasn't great at either. I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I wasn't great at either. But what I enjoyed the boxing more than the football. But what I would often find is that my safe space, my enjoyment space, was the library. So either 8, 9, 10 years old, I'd go down to the library, and I used to love just looking through books, and I would sit for hours just looking through books. It tended to be books about ancient armies or warfare, and those type of warrior, like samurai stuff, all this type of. I was fascinated by that as a child growing up, and I would often come home from the boxing club, and instead of going to play football with the lads, I'd nip into the library, and I'd be reading books about psychology. So I didn't realize it at the time, but it was books about philosophy and psychology. how people worked, what made them tick, etc. And that's really where I got into it. 8, 9, 10 years old. That's where I started learning about what I now know is psychology, and I've been fascinated with it ever since. It's been, some people just have a hobby and they love it and they don't need paid for it. I'm just fortunate that my hobby is such, what I'm interested in, people, how people interact with themselves and each other. That's something that I've been able to focus on throughout my life and actually make a career out of it. But yeah, it started in the old little library up in Northumberland there when I was a wee nipper.
Yeah. And at the time, because obviously, as you said, the normal child, the normal lad used to go to the football, used to go to the boxing club or play football, were you considered a bit of a weird child for the time?
Yeah, most definitely. And I've reflected on that a lot of the time, that you could, in some aspects, call me a bit of a geek. It was that, I just love reading books and reading books. As I sit here now, I've just got stacks and stacks of books across there. I love losing myself in books. It's, about not necessarily fiction, but facts, something that I can understand, something that it's about the brain or the heart, anything to do with that. I mean, it's always come back to these two things here, the thinking and feeling. That's what I've based my business on as well. But yeah, definitely, I've looked at myself and thought, was I a geek? Was I a bit of a dweeb at school and, and all that type of stuff? And I'm enthusiastically proud of the fact that I'm definitely a book nerd.
Uh, I think nowadays people get celebrated for being smart, but I imagine when you were a little lad, it wasn't like that. I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was very much the other way, where I'm lucky that I didn't fall into the category where I had other guys picking on me and stuff like that. I could pretty much handle myself, which was fine. But still, I had a natural tendency and enthusiasm for doing stuff that you could be associated with being a geek or a nerd. And I'm actually really lucky that there was things that didn't put me off from exploring that passion and keep reading books, and because that's where I am today. And I've been so fortunate to work with a lot of people all over the world. But it started off with that very geek nerd-like behavior of just spending hours and hours reading about people in psychology in the library when I was a young child.
Now I would imagine when you got into it, somebody must have took you under their wing and really explained it to you. 'Cause obviously, you can read it in a book, but sometimes it can take somebody explaining it to you to really understand. So, was there anybody that really took you under their wing, so to
No,
speak?
No, that wasn't. And again, that's a concept that I've explored many times. Like, would I have been a better version of myself if I had someone to guide me or to mentor me? But then I look at it from a slightly different angle as well and say, well, because I'm curious about a lot of things. One of my big passions is about free speech and getting people to question things that don't just take the sort of standard answer. Don't take what you're being offered. And even now around Corona and COVID and all this stuff, like, it's okay to question stuff. It's okay to ask, sometimes evocative questions, interesting questions about things. And I think because I've always been curious about finding out more, and the fact that I didn't have a guide or a mentor, that's actually pushed me to ask more questions. Because fundamentally, sometimes you can be coached or guided or mentored by individuals, but they've only got their perception as well. Sometimes they don't realize that they've got their boundaries that prevents them from exploring growth opportunities as well. So for me, it could have been helpful, but also not having a mentor could have been helpful as well, to the point where that's forced me out there, to the fact where, although I can't succinctly say one specific individual can claim credit for bringing me on, or nurturing me, or that one person who gave me that guiding light to then follow and seek out. What I can say is that there's very few people who I've met in my life that haven't added something to my toolbox, that I haven't learned, like my way wasn't the best way, and actually they've done it a better way than me, or they approached that better than me, or maybe I could have done it their way rather than my way. So I couldn't say one mentor, but I've definitely been mentored, and I've been open to being mentored by the people that I've met on my life journey so far. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people could do more of, is actually be open to the fact that we only know now what we know, and there's so much more knowledge out there and better ways of doing things, that if we could connect more, which is part of what I'm trying to do with my stuff on YouTube, if we can actually connect more and go for it, then I think we could all, that adaptation process that comes from learning, I think we'd all be in a better place, mate, or at least we'd be a more connected society. That's what I believe. Maybe I've got no proof that that would sort of present itself, but I just think that's what I believe, Anthony.
And I believe sometimes you can learn from people indirectly. Like if they do, like say for example, if they make a mistake, you can make a mental note of that and say that's what happened to him when he did that. So I need to make sure that I don't do that.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I think that's the amount of opportunities that are there in life on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be in work. It could be in any given situation where you're lucky enough to be able to observe someone going about his or her business. Is that there is opportunities for there, and actually, when you're observing people, you're more likely to be able to notice those learning points, because when someone, if you're under the cosh, if you're under pressure, if someone's asking you for an answer, just because the way that we are structured in our head is that we're probably focused on the fearful thing in front of us. That's how our brain picks it up, as opposed to the potential learning there. So I think the observation of people, as you've said, to notice what others do, and first of all, to notice it is a skill. To be able to observe it is a skill. But then to then reflect on it and potentially theorize or postulate how that could impact me, or the learning that the sort of positives I could take. Effectively, the old adage to learn from other people's mistakes. I think that's a great opportunity out there that not enough people take, that step towards to try to embrace that opportunity. Because I do think in 2020, where we are now, is a lot of people are scared to make mistakes, is they are fearful of potentially getting it wrong for the vast myriad of reasons that could present itself. But I tend to look at it that it's never wrong. It's just about the learning process. Are you giving yourself as much opportunity to learn as you can? So that's what I'm trying to teach my two young daughters now. One's 10 and one's 6. And we talk about failure, or the word failure, and I try to deconstruct it through conversation with them and listen to their perspective of it. Because when you fail at something, you could easily replace that. Well, I've learned how to do it better, or I've learned how not to do it. So I think, looking at to your point about giving yourself a chance to learn from others is a big key that not many people take up to its fullest opportunity, Anthony. I'll call it that.
Yeah. No, I also, I think, going back to what you were saying, like 2020 people are afraid to fail. I think social media has a lot to do with that, obviously, because with social media, I think it brings unnecessary pressures onto certain people.
Mm. Well, I think social media, um, I've been speaking about social media for years now, and the positives and also the not so positives that it brings. And social media really, I don't believe it's the evil thing, Anthony. Yeah, I don't believe it's a terrible child of the devil, or whatever other people call it, the labels. What I do think is that it basically gives another platform for what's always been there within humans, which is, if you look at anthropological history, so the story of man and woman all the way back to caveman times or before, is that we've always had a need to be accepted. It's a self-preservation mechanism. It's it's within our DNA that we need to be accepted by the crowd, because we think that will keep us safe. It all comes down to, producing more humans for the human race, making sure our bloodline continues, all of this type of stuff. So when you see social media, it's what it's doing is it's exposing an already existing human need to be liked, valued, adulated, praised by the rest of society, not because it's a bad thing, but because that's inextricably linked. There's a deep, unambiguous connection there, that by being liked, we're more likely to live and prosper. Where it is going wrong is the levels of required adulation, praise, acceptance by other people, where it's tapping into the brain the same level, but it's a bit like a crack addict. Like, we've had a little bit, but now we need a little bit more. We need a little bit more, and more and more and more. Our normal baselines, our normal hormonal regulational baselines, they are constantly being amped up. It's like someone's got the switch in, and we need more and more and more. So for me, that's the question, is like, where are we going to end up? When is enough enough? When somebody accepted of the fact that they don't need so much adulation. It's always nice to get a little bit praise, but that we don't need to constantly seek it. We don't need to, get happy with yourself. So for me, it's really interesting where I think we could end up as a human race, based on social media accelerating our evolutionary need to be accepted and praised by other people. But I think you've definitely got a valid point there, that it's the opportunity, it's the system, it's the technology. But actually, the really dangerous thing is it's just tapped into an existing, foundational humanistic need to be accepted and liked and loved.
And especially with what's going on right now with obviously COVID and everything happening in America. Obviously, obviously, right now, social media, social media, Twi- Twitter in particular is a really toxic environment if you get into the wrong crowd. But the one thing I would say is you are in control of your own. It's gonna sound weird, but you are in control of your own bubble. Like, if you only follow positive people, then you're obviously going to have a much better experience on there. But if you follow negative people, you're obviously going to have negative, a negative experience on there. I don't know whether that's a bit too simplistic, but that's how I look at it anyway.
Yeah, I think. Well, again, I mean, you talk about it being simplistic. I'll simplify it even further, Anthony. And some of the stuff that I do about the head and the heart with the clients, and also the sort of corporates that I work with, it's all about the glasses, all right? It's all about the glasses. It's about, like, what lens are you looking at the situation through? Because you can look at it one way and you'll feel something about it. You can look at it a different way and you'll feel differently about the same thing. It's a bit like when somebody annoys you. You may look at that person forevermore through a lens of darkness, through hurt, through pain, through annoyance. But by doing that, you break yourself off from the opportunity that person might have just had a bad day. They might have annoyed you, not on purpose. It sort of wasn't their intention to do that. And then on the opposite side, and it's, again, I always try to get a fair and balanced perspective on everything, is that you could really, really like this person, and you look at them through the glasses of love and joy and energy and an enthusiasm and all this type of stuff. But then that's also got its pitfalls, because you might not notice some of the negative stuff that they could do that you potentially could help them to improve on. And this is where you talk about these, situations. It's like, what can we do now to make the best of the situation? And again, remember, there's a lot of different, so from a neurodiversity perspective, you'll see where some people are just naturally aligned to be negative, and that's okay, because that's their DNA. You need negative people, especially, I don't know if Like we encourage organizations to bring in again, you know, being authentic, people who are more aligned to depression and those type of mental type conditions, illnesses. They can be actually quite helpful for looking at something and then see why it wouldn't work. Whereas you've got people who are optimistic, you could run ahead straight away and you might not pick up on the potential pitfalls, something potentially causing you money further, loss of income, revenue, etc., further down the line. So for me, it's not about being one side or the other. It's not about being pessimistic and optimistic. It's about being aware of everything that's going around you to allow you to be factual and also balanced as well, Anthony. That would be my perspective, you know.
So just just to just to simplify, basically, what I can gather what you're saying, we basically need a bit of both. That's the way. That's the best way to say what you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just try to base yourself. So, for example, when I do my body language videos, all right, now there's other people out there who they'll do body language videos, and what they'll try, I don't know what training they've had, I don't know how much exposure they've had, etc., etc. But it feels like they will put on a set of glasses and deliver some content that it's to keep the crowd happy. It's like, you know, the Caesar and the gladiators. We're going to do this because it keeps the masses happy. But what I do is I just comment on what I see. So regardless of what the masses want this person to have done or not want them to have done, if you're factual and balanced, you can always give the data. So if you come up with a conclusion at the end, it's more likely to be the right conclusion based on numbers rather than a conclusion based on emotion. Because when people get emotional, and remember, we are emotional. We'll get happy, we'll get sad. We are, you know, one step away from being a monkey. You know, absolutely, we can jump around and do all this type of stuff. And we see this, you know, we are very, very closely linked to those animals. Is that we see ourselves as like the superpower, superhuman, but we are just outside of that realm of going back to walking on four legs. But we are emotional. We do feel happiness, sadness, optimistic, pessimistic. But it's about having the awareness to accept that we do that, you know, and that it is on our radar that we can look at things in a certain way that may not be correct, that may not be the right way to do it, that may be biased to do it. And that's beautiful because that allows us to actually check ourselves. And when you can check yourself, then you do become a better version of yourself.
I would completely agree that, mate. To be honest, this one feels a bit weird for me cause I don't know what I don't know what I can add to really anything you just said there. Cause I agree with it all.
Oh, I'm pleased I've got Anthony's seal of approval.
So if I end up just listening to what you say there, that's the reason why I'm gonna, because it might look like I'm just staring at you, but I am actually listening to what you say.
Oh,
So
that's no problem at all. That's no problem at all, buddy. You ask the questions and I'll give my best answer.
so so do you know when you're prepared to do body language read or how much how much preparation you actually put into the actual videos themselves?
Oh, loads of preparation. I don't think people understand the actual amount of prep that needs to go into something like this because body language, all right? A lot of people see, but they don't observe. Okay, a lot of people see, but they don't observe. And what I mean by that is when you're trying to do, now I'm talking in the context of a specific body language assessment or an analysis of someone's body language, you've got so many areas on the body that move or do certain things, you can't see them all at once. So, for example, if Anthony's done um, a little video and it's about, I don't know, how Aston Villa are the best football team on the planet. Well, straight away I can tell that you'd be lying, all right? I wouldn't need to do any body language assessment there. But you would have different things. So what your eyes do, what your hands do, what your cheeks do, what your lips do, the way you move your head. All of these things have got to be analyzed in order to give an accurate and credible feedback on the body language that's being presented. And that's what I see on some of the videos that I've come across prior to me starting YouTube, is that it almost gives an overview, which is great for entertainment, and it doesn't take much time. But if I was to do a video, I've got to look at I'll watch the video. So for example, Prince Andrew, right? That was one of my big hitting videos. Obviously,
yeah,
lots of people were searching for it at the time.
yeah,
Did he have sex with that young girl? Did he not have sex? Did he go to Pizza Hut or did he not go to Pizza Hut? All this type of stuff that's good from it. Now, that was a really good opportunity to do some in-depth body language, Anthony, because what you could see with Prince Andrew was his full body, and you get a lot of body language reading or potential tells from below the waist. So because Prince Andrew was sitting in a chair, there wasn't a desk between him and the lady who was doing the interview, you had all these body language to analyze. But if I'm looking at Prince Andrew's eyes and what is his eyes doing, then I'm not watching his hands. I can maybe see them moving, but my point is, I can't watch it all at the same time. So what you've got to do is say, okay, I'm going to watch the head, and I'm not going to watch anything else. And then I might watch the thoracic area, so from the neck to the
yeah,
waist, and include that his hands, and then his feet. So you end up watching the clip 3 times. So if it's a half an hour video, that's an hour and a half. But there you get some real credibility, some real facts, some real meat on the bones about what's truly going on in your subject's head, because you've spent the correct amount of time looking at all of the body language that's available. And even then, you'll not get it all. There's always, if you look at here, then there's something happened over there, but you'll get the majority of it. Now, once you've done that, you've then got to say, okay, I want to talk about this part, this part, this part, this part, and this part. And then that involves actually coming up with some type of script about, right, so I need to talk about where he scratched his nose. I need to talk about where he rubbed his shoulder. And then you actually create the video, and then you put it all together. So a video could literally take about, a full day to actually do it. So I don't think a lot of people realize that even with, on YouTube, especially my type of video, like here, you and I are talking, and at the end of it, you'll have a recording that you could, if you wanted to, you could put it on your YouTube channel straight away, Anthony. There wouldn't be much sort of going backwards and forwards, because as we're talking now, we are creating the content. Whereas for my content, it's that little bit different. But I would say with that, because of the way I do it, although I'm in it for entertainment, I'm also in it for credibility. I've got a big world outside of YouTube where, big corporations, global corporations bring me in because they trust me to be able to deliver the type of training that I deliver, or which body language training is part of that. So for me, it's all about credibility, authenticity, factual data, as opposed to just doing something for, that sensationalist to sort of try and gain excitement. And I've got to be happy with my work at the end of the day. I need to know that I've given how can I put this? Some type of content that I could actually take to a client and say, look at that. Here's my body language analysis on X, Y, or Z. And they could look at that. And there's a little bit more humor in some of the stuff that I do on YouTube. But what supports that is an absolute foundation in psychological authenticity and information on which my YouTube videos and all the content are then based on, Anthony.
So basically, your your whole channel, it's like a reference. So if people contact you and they wanna use you for something, you can say, go and look at this video, and then if you like my work, then we can talk. Is that what you're basically trying to say? I don't want to put
Yeah,
words
so
in there.
I wouldn't necessarily take it to a client, But what I'm saying, if a potential client was to come across my videos, I would be happy that there would be no negative output from it. It's not as if, you know, they've discovered a secret dark locker with lots of Bruce's stuff that he only puts on YouTube, which could impact the work that I do in the corporate arena. Is that I'd be more than happy for them to come across it, because the stuff that I do on there, although it's got a little bit more of my humor on, it's still very credible and authentic and factual in its delivery, Anthony.
So basically, it's like a starter, isn't it? It's like a small sample, but it's not the whole meal.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a taster. It's a if we look at like Spanish tapas, it's the first course that comes out. Is that I'll give you a nibble. It's just, you know, wet your tongue with something like this. And people have approached me. You know, I get approached by the national newspapers now. I was approached by someone from America yesterday who writes for a national magazine in America, asking if they could use some of my stuff. And I get asked questions about, you know, for some of the papers in the UK here, reach out to me now and say, Bruce, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Everything from, you know, royalty across to politicians. So there's obviously something credible in my work, which is why they are reaching out to me to get my qualified opinion on it, Anthony.
I, I, my, my, my channel tastes like the whole meal. It's like the whole meal, isn't it? And and I and for me personally, I think your channel your channel is very insightful, because I've always been interested in body language, but most of the people I've seen talk about it, they talk about it in such a scientific way that sometimes it's hard to follow if you're not paying 100%
Yeah,
attention. And what I like about you, you simplify it to a certain extent. Like you use real, like you use real word, real scenarios. Like I can't remember what video it was. We use the scenario if somebody knocked on the door at 11, at 11,
yeah, that's right, mate. I remember that one. Yeah, you have been watching them, haven't you?
I do I do my research.
Yeah, you have, mate. Yeah. So that one, I can't remember what video it was on neither. But that's right. So, you know, when you talk about simple stuff, you've got thinking, feeling, and acting. This is all of the stuff that I talk about. And it's not necessarily just so that other people can understand it. It's so that I can understand it as well. That's where, you know, that's why I keep it simple. But yeah, that's the one where we were talking about. It's part of the brain called the limbic system, and part of the limbic system is the fight or flight system. So, you know, if you get a shock, but it's
Yeah,
also part of keeping us alive. And I think the example you're referring to is that, you know, everybody's on the settee at night time. It's 11 o'clock, and then all of a sudden you hear, who's that? And everybody goes quiet. Like, who's that at the door? Who's that? And because it's, you know, because it's weird and nobody should be at the door at 11 o'clock, we display the same behaviors as we did when we lived back in a cave, because it could be a lion at the door, it could be a saber-toothed tiger. Now it's not going to be, but our brain still thinks that there's a threat at the door, because it's wobbled our psychological safety, as in nobody should be coming to the door at 11, 12 o'clock at night, so who is it? And you'll find in the room, so this is not just necessarily body language, this is the sort of self-preservation mechanisms, is that you'll find that everybody, you know, there's a knock at the door and everybody goes, who's that? And you actually freeze. Your movement stops. Your breathing slows down. You're hypersensitive to that noise coming from the door. No different than if you were, I don't know, on the savannah and you heard a lion growling. Oh, you'd stop still. You know, and you can see animals do this all over the world. If they think there's a threat, first thing they do, boom, they don't move, because any movement could give my presence away to the potential predator that's coming for us. So yeah, well done for watching my videos, brother. Round of applause.
Like, 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 you know, you talking about Prince Andrew earlier. I think with Andrew, I'm not very good with the royal thing.
Yeah, Prince Andrew.
And the one bit of the video I did like is when you took it down to his when you took it down to his toes.
Yeah, his toes started kicking and wobbling, yeah.
Yeah, can normally, as we've said, some people they just focus on the obvious stuff, but you really dive in there and you really get to the meat. You really get to the meat on the bone, so to speak.
Yeah, or his meat on the toes. Yeah, it was good, that one, because you've got, you know, like I say, a lot of people generally, when it comes to body language, Anthony, they look at the face or they look at the hands. But what goes on behind the desk, like Dominic Cummings was a really good example, as well as Prince Andrew. So Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson's right-hand man, he got accused of breaking his own lockdown rules by driving to Durham in the middle of the pandemic. And he done this briefing where he was at a table in his garden. I don't know who told Prince Andrew to do an interview. He shouldn't have done it. I don't know who told Dominic Cummings to do an interview. He shouldn't have. I don't know who told Carol Baskin of Tiger King to do an interview. She shouldn't have done it, right? Because when you know what you're looking for, it's really obvious. So Dominic Cummings, because you can see his feet, just like Prince Andrew, that's where adrenaline goes. All right. So when you've got the limbic system, there's a part of the brain called the thalamus. So as I'm speaking to you now, you're sort of taking information in. Look, this is like the funnel coming in. And although obviously many parts of the brain, part of the limbic system is that if your brain detects a threat, it'll shoot the information across to the amygdala. All right, so the amygdala is the seat of fear. It's like the emotional, real part of the emotional fight or flight syndrome. That's the amygdala taking control. And you'll see this a lot of the time where people get into an argument or they lose emotional awareness of that situation that they're in. In that particular moment, you know, they're aggressive, they're violent, they're argumentative. That's always a good indicator that you've got the amygdala's in control. It's what I say, the Hulk's in control rather than the heart's in control in the head. When the Hulk takes over the heart and head, we're in a really bad space. We're definitely not having nice conversations. It tends to be, that's where you get fighting and violence and, you know, and all this type of stuff. But when that amygdala kicks in, what it does is it sends a thing called adrenaline via the pituitary gland around the body. And one of the big things you'll see is that that's where Prince Andrew's feet started to kick up when he talked about a specific point. So when we look at body language, it's about that emotional baseline. What do they do most of the time? All right, so we can take it, that's their average. And then if they do anything more of the time or less of the time, then we want to inquire, why is that occurring? Why is their emotional baseline changing? So when Prince Andrew kicked his leg up, well, he hadn't done it before and he didn't do it. I think he done it once after. But in that hour interview, he only done it twice. So because he does something different, you then go back and say, well, what was being said at that particular point? Because his body reacted at that particular point. And it was something like, you know, had you met up with that girl? Have you ever met that girl before? And although he was saying no, his leg kicked, which meant there was some type of connection. He wouldn't have got that adrenaline kick if his brain hadn't been telling another internal narrative. So for me, asking questions, if I see somebody do a kick like that, I'm not going to move anywhere. I know. Now, I'm not saying that he was lying, all right? But something made him uncomfortable to the point, comfortable enough that he produced an adrenaline dump. What was going on in his head that produced that adrenaline? What story? Because it was a story he was telling, a thought he had. What was going on right there, Prince Andrew? Because I'm not moving an inch until I find out what was going on inside your head there. Were you at Pizza Hut or not? Were you at Burger King or somewhere else when you're sort of trying to hide your tracks? Yeah, that leg kick, and again with Dominic Cummings, if you watch my video on Dominic Cummings, you'll see his leg starts wrapping a bit like an octopus, a bit like some ivy on a wall. It starts wrapping around the chair and rubbing up and down. and that's a good indicator that like it's what you call a self-soothe. So he's trying to give himself some confidence. He's trying to give himself some type of pacification that it's going to be all right. And you can tell that by the legs. But so a lot of people face like focus up here, Anthony. There's so much stuff goes on under the table.
Yeah, like, another one I found quite interesting is the one, I can't remember the guy's name, it's the one with, the one where Piers Morgan did the sit down interview, and the guy's body was leaning backwards, like he didn't want to be involved in the conversation. Can you can you remember the one I'm talking about? I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah, so that one there is it was about the serial killer.
Yeah,
So it was a serial killer that Piers Morgan had went to interview whilst he was in jail, and they were trying to get some more information about the crimes that this person had been found guilty of committing. And yeah, that particular one there, it's called the lean back. It's basically where I'm trying to, so I can't get away from your voice, but what I'm physically trying to do is remove myself from the situation as most as I can because I'm not comfortable. And again, you know, I talk about that T junction. So when anybody does something with their body, what was going on at that particular time, like that T junction, stop. Just try to inquire about what was going on there. And that's what you'll find, for example, in that guy, when he leant back, it was because Piers asked a certain question. I can't remember what the question was, but a certain question that that guy got defensive about or he didn't want to answer. There was some type of discomfort there. And you got that by him leaning back. He was physically taking his body back. He wanted to create as much distance from him and Piers Morgan as possible. And again, if I was questioning that, if I was running the interview, I'd be on that. Honestly, I'd be on that like a dog on a jam sandwich. I wouldn't be going anywhere because he showed a lot of discomfort. So that's where I'd be trying to sort of peel that little bit apart to find out what thought was going on inside his head there, Anthony. You have been watching the videos, mate, haven't you?
just 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 a quick reminder. I think it was about his daughter's knowing one of the victims or his daughter. I can't remember whether it was daughter or daughters, but
Oh, yes, you're right. You're right. Wow, good on you there. Yes, you're right. So it was a question about, and it was a 14-year-old girl who had potentially, like, he knew her. That's what Piers Morgan was getting at, as in this girl used to
yeah,
come round and play with your daughters. And he had always said that he didn't know the girl. But then he started giving them some answers that actually indicated that um, he, he was trying to put barriers in place that didn't need to be put in place, which gives an indication if someone's trying to shut me off here by answering a different question, why
yeah.
aren't they answering the question that I'm asking? And that's when you see it. Yeah, good on you. Do you know what? I think I need to bring you in as my researcher on my on my channel, Anthony.
I, 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 I always like to do a bit of research. 'Cause I hate interviewers when they don't do the research. I just think, why are we even bother? Why are you even bothering to do it? Like, there's absolutely no point if you're not going to bother to put the time in to do it. At least a bit of research.
Yeah, fair enough, mate.
So, did that interview in particular? Did you think do you think Piers handled it well? Because I thought he did amazing, and I don't normally like Piers Morgan. I think he can come across as a bit of a bellend sometimes.
Yeah, I think he can. I think he's got. Um, so you know, but if you look at the task, what Piers Morgan is there to do, he's there to create good, actually interesting, evocative type content that people want to watch more of. So all of his interviews are set up like that. And if you notice, he'll only really push hard at the end when he's got all of the content that he wants, because that helps him finish on a high, you know, where he really gives the potential, sorry, the criminal, because they've been found guilty, some real stick, if you will, Anthony. So yeah, I think he's very good at what you know, at what he does. But I would concur, I would agree that on occasion he does come across as a bit of a bellend, to use your phraseology.
To be honest, if you just, if you just started doing that, yeah, like one-on-one interviews, yeah, and it was on Good Morning or whatever it called, yeah, I think it would be a lot more likable, but because he does Good Morning and all sorts of crap like that, he comes across as a complete moron sometimes. At least in my opinion, anyway. Obviously, I don't want to speak for you.
But I think that's what makes him, you know, him interesting. It's the old Marmite syndrome. You either like him or you hate him. And I think because a lot of people hate him, you can't end, you can't do anything but watch him more. It's like got the opposite effect of what you would think you have, because he annoys you so much. You know, my wife's exactly the same. She says she hates Piers Morgan, but every morning there she is arguing with him. You know, and he can't hear her. She's just having these own internal arguments in the bedroom, just like shouting at the TV and saying, Piers, you're wrong, you're incorrect, all this type of stuff. But morning after morning, she'll tune in to watch Piers Morgan.
For me, for me, yeah, for me, yeah, I'm the sort of person that I don't hate anybody because I don't know him like that. But I just don't watch him, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
eh, unless unless he says something completely moronic, yeah, I don't really pay any attention to him.
I think Piers has got he's got a knack for pissing people off, Anthony. I think he's honed that art skill down to a fine degree. I think he's an expert in being able to do it, but also he has some, again, you know, fair and balanced. Also, he has some very specific questions, and I do appreciate and respect the fact that, for example, if the politicians don't answer his questions, he will go after them. He will repeatedly ask the same question. And I quite like that, because I don't think we hold politicians to account enough now. So as much as Piers Morgan can annoy me with some things that he does, I've also got massive respect for some of the stuff that he does and how he does it as well.
To be fair, to be fair, he always stands for what he believes in, and whether you like him or not, that is a commendable thing.
Yeah.
Too many people are willing to change their stance based off public opinion of them, and fair play to Piers. He always stand by what he believes, whether I whether I agree with it or not. You have
Mm.
to you have to commend him for that.
Yeah, I think he's very much like Donald Trump in that way. As in, it's not necessarily about whether he's right or wrong. It's the fact that he's got the conviction to stand by what he believes in, knowing that a lot of people are going to go against it. I think that for me, that is commendable. Not necessarily what he's saying, that, you know, that could be debated and pulled apart, etc. But the fact that he is prepared to put it out there and stand by it, knowing that a large number of people will push back on it, I like that conviction.
I think more. I wish more people would have that conviction. To be honest, because I think that will make the world more interesting. But as we've said before, a lot of people crave validation, don't they? So I
Mm.
can I can understand why a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
So, so sorry, sorry. Did, 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 did I you know, if, you know, if Netflix came to you and said, we want you to do an interview series with like some serial killers, for example, would you do it? just out of curiosity, or did you stay away from that sort of thing?
Oh no, I would dive into something like that with both hands, Anthony. Yeah, I'll be all over that like a rash. Yeah, that would be me. Just for experiential learning, for to improve my skills, to go into areas where I would be put in a learning spot as well. You know, I'm a big believer in that. You may not be brilliant at something, but the more you try, you've got to get better at it. All right, that's my philosophy on everything. Is that even from talking on camera to interacting with other people, is that the more you do it, there's a higher probability that you'll get better at it. So for me to do something like that, yes, it'll be entertaining, yes, it'll be interesting, but there will be a lot of opportunity for me to grow as well and develop my skills in a very interesting area that I would enjoy from an education perspective, but also from a personal development perspective as well, Anthony.
I've, I, for me personally, yeah, I would just love to get inside their mind and see exactly how they work, because as you, as you well know, sometimes it can be one moment of somebody's life, and then for night, and then for and then for 90, and then for 99.9% of the time, they can be they can be the most loveliest person in the world, but for that 1 second, they
Yeah.
did they did something unforgivable. Obviously, with serial killers, it's a bit different, because obviously they're serial killers, but I would be more interested to speak to the people that have just committed one murder, yeah, but it was like in the moment of rage, or in the moment of passion, or like something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you've got, well, again, even behind me, I said that this is what it all comes down to. 99% of the time they'll be in control of their thoughts and feelings, but for that 1 second, the Hulk takes control. Emotion, animalistic behavior, self preservation behavior, procreation. Someone's looking at my partner, someone wants to take my ability to breed, to mate. It all comes down to some very sort of foundational type behaviors that we feel threatened or could be taken away from us, and opportunities that we feel are going to go to someone rather than us. And that's why you see violence. That's why you see aggression. Normal people, if we can call that word normal, can get aggressive, can get violent, can display split second emotions that in that critical sphere of influence right there, that's where the Hulk takes over. So a lot of people, I believe, are in jail because of the Hulk. Some people have got some type of illness where psychological illness or something like that, where they're not in control of it. They need therapy, they need medication, etc. But a lot of people are in jail because of normal human, behaviors, predictable human behaviors, that all the stars have aligned, and it was just enough to get their hope to show up. Boom, someone, punching someone, someone getting a gun out, someone stabbing someone with a knife. All of this type of thing are specific critical behaviors, only done in a short period of time. But you're right, it can impact the rest of the lives, and the people who've also been involved in that situation, Anthony.
This is a bit of an awkward question, yeah. But do, do you know do you know do you know do you know paedophile? Yeah, I I I've always wondered, yeah, how their mind frame works. Yeah, because obviously you don't go out the room. I believe anyway. You don't go out the room being a paedophile. So I would be I would be fascinated to find out what their what was their mindset into becoming a paedophile, into into becoming a paedophile, if you know what I mean.
It is. I think it's an interesting debate, and I think we need more debates like this where we can speak authentically with our opinions and our beliefs. And again, it doesn't mean we're right, but having this type of stuff, is that were they born like that? So you talk about nature or nurture. the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath is like one's created from birth, one's created by their environment that they grew up in and is influenced by. And you could ask the same question about, yeah, and the answer is that I don't know. Maybe there's a number of answers. But fundamentally, what you can say factually is that they have had an urge to engage in some form with children, which is not acceptable in today's society, at least in westernized society, which is, we've been conditioned to. And because it's not acceptable, there are laws and regulations and rules around that. That said, there's laws and regulations and rules around everything. So, it'll be an interesting debate because it could grow arms and legs about, well, there's other people who display other types of behaviors that are, say, more acceptable. So someone who's a bank robber, all right, someone who's a bank robber, they have had an urge to go and get money. Their dopamine hit, if you will, it's come from that desire, that approach to go and get the money. They break the law, therefore they end up in jail. You've got pedophiles who they've got an urge to break the law, and instead of robbing banks, they go and engage with children in one way or more, and then they end up in jail. The fact is that they're all chasing dopamine. They're all chasing desirable type impulses, urges. Where they get it from is the variable, the sort of variable factor. And for them, it just so happens is that where they get their dopamine hits from, where they get their pleasure sensations from, is not as acceptable as, let's say, a bank robber, nor is it, in my opinion, as morally acceptable or should be morally acceptable because of the impact that said actions can have on children, on their families. That's not to say bank robbers don't have impact. Just thinking it's probably maybe me with my conscious or the subconscious bias being a father and a grandfather here. But definitely one is more impactful than the other from my perspective. That said, if they were born like that, then there has to be some degree of working with that authentic truth that they didn't ask to be born like this, or even to be conditioned by it. Say, okay, how do we solve the problem? And the only solution that society has come up with at present is to put people like that in jail. I know there's some type of chemical treatments, etc., that are out there that tries to nullify, reduce, diminish their sexual type desires. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I think everybody, you would have to, and this goes for a lot of my work, take everybody on a singular individual type basis to then analyze and understand what's gone on in that particular individual's head, life, etc. But fundamentally, the output is that they have committed a crime, which is not accepted by society and has been recognized that because there's rules and regulations in place. It would be interesting to try and reverse engineer it. So if there were indicators, like, when you get hungry, then you ask for some food. Or if you're thirsty, you'll then ask for a drink or something like that. I wonder if they could look at the indicators, which could actually, and then there could be an input, then there could be like some type of interjection, where if the indicators were here, then that would give us a good scope that this person could potentially fall into that category. So let's do something for that person, but also let's do something for society as well. Because at the moment, we're just reactive. We're just reactive to when things have happened. I don't know if there's a potential to become more proactive to stop as many things happening, Anthony.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Because I personally think putting them in prison not really solving the problem. It's like putting a little plaster over a great big wound. Basically, it's like for the short term, it might be, for the short term it would work, but for the long term, for the long term, it's not really I don't want to say it's not achieving anything, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
it, it's not really solving anything. And just to be clear, I'm obviously not saying that they obviously should go to prison, but I think once they are, I don't know, but once the prison sentence is over, they should be taken to um, a medical facility with with, exper- with experts to really dissect the problem, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think with that, you've then got an option. It's a bit like Corona. You're looking at the efficiency versus thoroughness trade-off. There's a for each action, there's a reaction, and there's always a trade-off. If I do this, this will be impacted. If I don't do this, this will be impacted. So at the moment, we're looking at Corona versus the impact on the economy. Like, what is the ratio? What's the acceptable ratio of deaths that we actually we are prepared to accept this amount of deaths in order for everybody else to go back to normal. And that's, people say, oh, that's a shocking question, but actually it's an authentic question. And we do it every day. Like, there's people die on the motorways every day. So there's got to be an acceptable amount of people who die, but we're still allowed to drive on the roads. Yeah. And it's the same with Corona as well. So what is the acceptable death rate in order for the rest of the country to go back to how normal it was? Or to start edging towards there, because there's got to be some type of normality, that's achieved at some point in the graph down the line, Anthony. And it's when you say, you're talking about stuff like this, where there's got to be a trade-off. Well, what is the data? What is the information? Does the data then give us the answer that actually we can't trust these people to go back into society? If that is the output that we've been given, then maybe they've got to spend the rest of their lives in incarceration, in jail, in prisons, or some type of place where they can be controlled, because not through society's fault or even their own fault, but their natural disposition of the behaviors they want to display is not adding anything to the widest, sort of gene pool society acceptability of the normal Joe and Ann public. And again, those are the type of questions that we need to ask, is like, whether it's their fault or not is a different, it's sort of a different topic to me. But the output is that, have you got someone who can be trusted in society to follow the rules and the regulations that society has laid down through the courts, etc., through the acts of Parliament? And if the answer is no, then their freedom must be curtailed to some extent, that they never end up in the position where they can carry out the crimes that we know that they're capable of because they've done it in the past. That's, for me, is the sort of question. And it comes down to, like human rights, the Freedom Act, or all this type of, freedom of information. All this type of stuff needs to go into the pot. But fundamentally, when you're talking about the topic specifically that you're talking about, it's about what can we do that's in the best interest of everybody. And for sure, it's an evocative topic. I think, especially for myself with kids and a grandson, it sort of gets you. It does get you thinking. But that's why we need more debate about it. That's why we need more discussions about it, because we sometimes are blind to the other opportunities, the other possibilities out there. And just because we're thinking something doesn't mean it's the right thing to think, Anthony.
Of course, not my my main my my my, my main point was, yeah, that if, let's be honest, some of these people are really smart individuals, and if they learn to hide it, yeah, for like 2 or 3 years, yeah, or how, how long the sentence is, yeah, and then obviously, you've just wasted your time, but like you just wasted a spot. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just think there need to be more. There need to be more done. To be honest, I don't know how to explain it in the right way, but I think you know what I'm trying to say.
I think it needs developed. I think it needs explored. I think it needs more courageous and open debate to understand all of the options that are going out there. Sometimes it's not a quick fix. Sometimes there is no quick fix. Sometimes there is no answer. But the ability to start authentic, credible, factual, and collaborative type debates about any topic that we're talking about is often one of the best ways to get things moving in the right direction, for sure.
I on a light on a light on a lighter note, obviously, 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 your friend, your quite good friend with True Geordie. So how did you meet Brian or Geordie, whatever you want to call him?
Well, I met Brian. So when is it now? So it's September now. So so not April just passed, the April before. I was going down to work. I've got a number of global clients who pull on my services at certain times, and I was going down to Surrey, just south of London, to meet one of my clients. They had flew in from Germany. They invited me down there. I was on the train going down to meet them, and I got on the train at Newcastle, and I thought, because to be honest, I wasn't really into YouTube at all, especially not with, or at least the area that I've been moving into over the past 12 months. But Brian's quite a recognizable figure. He's not the smallest of guys. He's not the shortest of guys. He's, this sort of big type Thor beard that he's got going on. Brian tends to stand out from the crowd, regardless wherever he is. And I had been looking at YouTube. I had lots of people saying to me previously, Bruce, you should put some of your stuff on YouTube. People would enjoy it, etc. So it's something I had looked at, but I just hadn't got around to it. I sort of didn't understand it. And then Brian just happened to get on the same carriage as me. And this speaks volumes for Brian. I can only explain and give comment on my experiences from Brian. But I went up to Brian, just introduced myself and said, this is what I saw you a little bit on YouTube, because within Newcastle, Brian got his first base, if you will, of fans from his very passionate rants about Newcastle United. So I was aware, I seen him in the papers, again, the sort of face stands out. So I went up to introduce myself. And literally from Newcastle to London, we just started having the crack. That was it. And it's very rare that you get somebody who you can just talk to for 3 hours who you've never met before. And he was telling me about YouTube. I was telling him about some of the stuff that we done. Actually, I've got a picture where I give him one of my cubes. This is some of the stuff that I do from a psychological perspective with the clients. He took a few photographs of that. And I was like, look, just tell us the crack about YouTube. What's the secret? What's the algorithm? And he's like, look, mate. He says, just pick up your fucking phone and start recording stuff. He says, if you don't make videos, you're never good. And that, honestly, I remember that bit of advice now, where there was nothing else to it. Just pick up your phone, because he was explaining he started by putting his iPhone or whatever he had on an ironing board and just recording himself. He's like, just do it. So that's the biggest thing, just do it. And then we sort of kept in contact sporadically. And then when I started doing my body language videos, it just happened to be about KSI and Logan Paul, and obviously Brian is immersed in that scene. He was like the commentator, he's been a presenter, and Brian quite liked that bit of work. So we picked up a little bit more, had a bit of a chat. I mean, don't get us wrong, from me being from Newcastle, of course I want someone like True Geordie to do well, and I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm biased and trying to, anybody from this area, I want to push them up. I want to see them succeed. I think it's fantastic when anyone who's put a lot of hard work in succeeds at stuff. So for me, helping Brian, coming with the body language, adding some content to his channel, but it's also great that Brian's helped me build my brand as well, by inviting me down at the live streams. More people get to see me, help me spread the word about male mental health and all that type of stuff that I'm on about as well. I've been training with Brian at the gym now for about 2 months. Now I say training with Brian at the gym, Anthony, more like me watching him lift heavy weights and then me lifting light weights. I would say something that's more accurate. But yeah, he's a really strong guy. He's getting into his boxing. He's doing this stuff with a Gymshark. He's got a few more announcements coming up. So yeah, really, really happy for him. And the fact that he's from Newcastle, it sort of puts the icing on the cake, mate.
So, but yeah, when you say, I would say, I would say you're doing a very, very important job because you're giving him some encouragement. I can imagine if you don't have somebody encouraging you and, and making you push beyond that, beyond the barrier, so to speak, then you
Yeah.
can sometimes get a mental block.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Fortunately for Brian, I mean, Brian's a very driven individual. You know, he knows where he's going. He's got the strategy. He's made lots of mistakes as he's putting his own videos and learning opportunities that you know that have come across. But that's why you've got the guy standing in front of you now. You know the way that he is. He's got the live streams. He's got other stuff coming up. You've got the podcast. You know, I mean, the Gymshark is just massive as well. And I think I think with the Gymshark, as I've said to Brian, is that usually with Gymshark, you get a lot of people who are almost like model type people, where the average person in the street will never look like that. Doesn't matter how hard they train. Whereas Brian, I would say a high percentage of the normal population connects with somebody like Brian because they can see themselves in Brian, that he's an average guy who's working hard. He's trying to achieve some stuff. He's made mistakes in the past and done things that he wishes he could different, as we all have. And I think that's part of the package. When people see that, that's why they buy more into it. And I think it's that connectivity, that relatableness that Brian brings to the table. That's why I think Gymshark signing him was probably the best decision they've ever done, because it brings so many more people further towards the brand, in a way that they can buy into the message that True Geordie's trying to do. But I think, over the next 2 to 3 years, when you see who's been signed, like Joe Rogan and all this type of stuff, you think, but Brian can't be far off. He can't be far off by getting some big deal that will just cement him in the sort of YouTube superstardom type area,
Yeah, I definitely think in the next in the next 4 years, I would say he'll have a deal with Spotify. Because I don't know whether you know who Jack who Jack Mate is.
Yeah, I've saw Jack Mate's post that he's been signed by Spotify, which is great as well.
Yeah, so who knows, who knows, maybe in 4 years' time or even in 2 years' time, they might think we need to take a chance on him or something like that.
Well, what about you? What about you? As all the opportunity that you bring something different to the table. There's not many people, and this is why I was excited about coming on. I've never been involved in a podcast or an interview with somebody like yourself, with your background, Anthony. The world's becoming more acceptable. It's becoming more exploratory. It's becoming more, as well as us sort of narrowing down and actually becoming more defensive. There's a lot of areas that are opening up there now. So don't write yourself off, mate. Where are you going to be in 2 to 3 years' time if you keep coming up with this type of content?
Yeah, I personally think, yeah, because of my speech pattern, I think I will I will have a I will have a small I will have a small but loyal audience. And to be honest, I would rather have a small but loyal audience. Because when you get to a certain point, yeah, obviously you get all the negativity that comes with that. You know. Anyway, I forgot what I was gonna say, but it don't matter.
Hey, we can just keep talking, brother. We'll just keep talking, man. But you mentioned that negativity. Now, Anthony, negativity is everywhere. Negative is everywhere. You could have an audience of like 100 subscribers. I know you've got more than that, but you could have an audience of 100 subscribers, and generally, and somewhere in there, there's going to be negative comments. But it's down to the glasses, Anthony. It's down to how you look at them. It's down to how you deal with them. And you've got the capability, like anybody, to be able to deal with them in a way that puts a broom up your arse, yeah, and you strive for greater things. You start realizing your potential. You know, you stop limiting yourself because, oh, well, if I get a bigger audience, they'll be more negative. Fuck them. Go for it. Yeah, because I tell you what, on your deathbed, I guarantee you won't be saying, oh, I'm pleased I stayed little with a loyal audience. Why the fuck did I not go for it? Why didn't I aim big? Why didn't I shoot for the stars? Why not? Why not, brother? Don't limit yourself. Don't create a story in your head that you limit yourself thinking it's other people when you're the limiting factor. You've got all the opportunity the same as anybody else. Just bear that in mind, brother.
My problem is I'm too self-deprecating. Cause I watch obviously people like Brian and people like Joe Rogan, and unfortunately, I know I shouldn't do this, but ultimately I compare myself to them, and really I should be making my own lane, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%, brother. You, the only thing that you are is you. There's always going to be a comparison. It's just like, right, we'll tell a little story here, all right? So there's the tramp, right? There's the tramp, the homeless guy, and he's sitting on the path, yeah? And he's looking at the bloke walking past him with the nice trainers on, all right? He says, I would like them trainers. But then the bloke with the trainers, he hasn't got a job. He can't afford anything. He can't even get on the bus. He's got to walk to work. So as the bus comes by, he looks at, so the bloke with the trainers looks at the bloke on the bus and says, I would love to be able to get on that bus. Yeah. Now the bloke on the bus starts looking outside the window. He's got a job. He's got like hourly rate, etc., etc. And he looks out there and there's a Ford Escort next to the bus. And he thinks, fucking hell, Anthony, I would love to be able to have a job that I could afford a Ford Escort. So you've got the tramp looking at the bloke with the trainers, the bloke with trainers looking at the bloke on the bus, the bloke on the bus looking at the Ford Escort, and there comes the Lamborghini. And the bloke at the Ford Escort says, bloody hell, I wish I would have, I want that job. The point is you can always compare yourself, and that's fine, but it's what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Never mind what anybody else is doing. Are you optimizing your own potential? That's something that you need to reflect on. Out of everything that you could potentially do, out of all the opportunity that you've got, out of all the potential that sits in front of you, don't you limit yourself. Like if someone says, that's not good enough, that's fine. But don't you be the one saying to yourself, that's not good enough, mate, all right?
Yeah.
God damn, I'm motivated here, Anthony. We're ready to roll.
Seriously, that really helped me. So I appreciate that, because sometimes in my position, that you need sometimes you have to be your own worst.
The worst opponent you'll ever face, the worst opponent, and I've got it on the back of my hoodie there, the worst opponent you'll ever face is the one inside your own head. You will never meet someone who gives yourself more shit than that inner voice that you create.
Yeah, I just want to address something for the viewers. If you don't, I don't know what it is. Because basically, I have cerebral palsy. Yeah. So, basically, I wanted to go back to like the reading. Yeah. When somebody got a disability, yeah, are they more difficult to read, like body language and stuff? Because I would imagine so.
No, not really. it's different. It's different. Like you and I on this call now, we've laughed, we've cried, we've debated, we've questioned. So you've got an emotional baseline, just the same as I've got an emotional baseline, Anthony. Yeah. Now that's the thing. There is that there may be certain things that you might have to look a bit harder, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be done. Every single person with a head and a heart has got an emotional baseline. Give me anyone, and I'll tell you the tells. I'll tell you the normal baseline, as long as I've looked at them for long enough. Now that there, again, I could understand why you think that, but that would be you saying that, Anthony. That the data doesn't back that up. Just like the data doesn't back up that you should limit yourself to a small channel.
Cause, 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 because yeah, the reason why I started doing this in the first place, because a lot of these interviewers, yeah, they all sound the same, and they all talk the same. So and it can get quite boring and stale, if you know what I mean. Hearing the same voice, because I obviously go to journalism school, and I obviously study journalism for years and years, and sometimes you just need to hear a different voice. That's what I like about Brian. Got such a different voice, obviously, because it's not traditionally media trained, and I think
I think that's one of the good things about YouTube is that, as far as I'm aware, at least from the small spectrum of people that I've come across, is that like nobody's media trained. But actually I like that because you get more of an authentic look at the person that you're connecting with. Um, and again, that's what I think about me is that I always try to give my perspective on something. Doesn't mean that you'll agree with me. To be fair, I'm not bothered that if people agree with me or not. Because if I was bothered about everybody agreeing with it, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing to the extent that I'm doing it. I'm not talking about YouTube here, by the way. I'm talking about the corporate stuff that I do, Anthony. But the fact is that a lot of people, like I will disagree with you, you will disagree with me, we might agree on some stuff. It's like people agreeing and disagreeing is normal human behavior. So it then lends itself to, well, if I put something out on YouTube, some people are going to like it, some people aren't. Some people are going to say, well done, some people are going to say that it's shit. And everything in between there, all right, everything in between. But once you accept that, you're not going to please everybody, and some people you will please, is that allows you to start being more exploratory, more courageous, more have that more conviction in your inner self. So it'd be great for me to see you push this on and to see where you can go without your limiting self-belief, without you actually putting yourself in a box and saying, oh, well, this is where I'm safe. This is where I feel like I fit. Right? This is where I feel like this is my place. Get lost, rip the box apart, explore your boundaries, grow your audience, accept that people are going to like it and some people are not going to like it, accept that you're going to get positive stuff and you're going to get some harsh criticism and abuse as well. That's just like every creator, but don't let that hold you back, mate. All right?
I suppose the best way to look at it is like whether it's positive or negative, at least they're talking about it. And sometimes that's the best way to be in life.
Yeah.
Any 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 publicity, good publicity in certain circumstances. You know what I mean? I think also my problem is because people compliment me so much. Yeah, I find yeah my natural instinct is to be negative because I don't think I get enough constructive criticism, so that can sometimes lead into me be overly critical of myself, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think it's a balance. I mean, you can you can understand it, although it's not helpful. So you come along, you've got cerebral palsy, you're a guy lying on a bed, you're trying your best. Nobody probably wants to upset you, but it's actually okay to have like authentic conversations and say, Anthony, I think you could do this better, or I think you could have done it like this, or what do you think about this potential way of doing it? Yeah. But again, that's because people are scared to speak up. That's because they don't like having those conversations. That's because they haven't got that psychological permission. Where if I was speaking up, they'd say, "Oh, Bruce, you're shit. You're full of crap. Or you're brilliant. You're fantastic. You're one of the best brains in the world." I actually said that myself there, but you know what I mean. Whereas they probably wouldn't say that to you because of your disability and because they don't want to be. But it's about finding that balance. It's about being factual. It's about being sincere. It's about being authentic. And we can have those conversations. Yeah, we can have those conversations, absolutely. And I think more people should be able to do that. Even more so that, someone like yourself is just saying, I would like to get some feedback. I would like to improve. I would like to see, as well as the adulation and the praise that I get, what could I do right? Because it's not what they say to your face, it's what they say behind your back as well. That's the type of thing. And if we can bring more stuff like to the fore there and be more truthful, mate, there's some magic shit to be had.
Because I think that's why I think sometimes that's why I'm so negative on myself. It's because in my mind, if I don't do it, then not many people are going to. So I'm not going to really improve because all I'm seeing is positivity. And even though I said, as we said earlier, sometimes you need that balance between obviously great to have positivity, but you also need that negativity to really balance yourself out and to really improve yourself, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is, and it's all important that people can bring it to the table. And when you've done good, Anthony, you've done good. And Anthony, when you've been a dick, you've been a dick, and everything in between there. But as long as it's done with the intent of I'm just trying to convey how I feel, rather than or what I'm thinking, as opposed to knock you down or to be negative about it. There's for me, there's a difference about providing constructive feedback and being abusive, if that makes sense, Anthony.
Obviously, obviously, I'm not saying that you're saying this, but obviously, I'm not an idiot. I know what is constructive criticism and what is just being an arsehole.
Yeah, definitely.
But obviously, yeah, obviously on certain days, yeah, more like one day something can get you down, and then on another day something can really not bother you that much. So it's all about finding the right balance
Yeah, of course it is,
and
mate.
taking in enough information to improve, but not to really drag yourself down by it. Any, anyway, the last topic I wanted to talk about is the boxing.
What do you want to talk about on the boxing then? Boxing's my passion, mate, so ask away.
So obviously we got Usyk versus Derek.
Derek, I'm coming for you, Derek. If you've seen Usyk, he's running on the beaches and in his canoe on Instagram and Twitter. All he hears is, Derek, I'm coming for you, Derek.
To be honest, I don't think I personally think Usyk would just. I don't want to say destroy him, but I do think it would be like picking him apart because obviously Tajora's coming to the end of his career now, and I think he's gonna be too strong for him,
Yeah.
and I just think it'll be one-sided. Now maybe I'll be wrong, but that's what I personally believe.
No, I agree. I think Usyk is a very technically gifted operator. He's bigger than a lot of guys think as well, even though he's boxed at lower weights. He is a. I'm not saying he's a Tyson Fury type stature, but he's he's a big guy. He'll be able to hold himself. I think Tony Bellew is better than Derek Chisora, or at least what Chisora has shown so far. So it wouldn't surprise us if towards the later rounds, Usyk stops Chisora. That's what I think could happen. Obviously, Del Boy, he's got that ability. He's such a big guy that if he lands, you'll take him out. But I'll be very surprised if that actually happened.
Well, as a as a Derek George, as a Derek Chisora fan. I hope it does happen. But looking at the age difference and looking at the fitness difference, I can't see it happening personally. But maybe I'm wrong. But
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if it did, because they're not. You know, that opens a whole new door for Chisora. To put him in the mix, like I say, with Joshua, you know, that would be the WBO mandatory challenger, which would just be crazy. That Derek Chisora's come from nowhere, then all of a sudden you might have a shot at a world title belt as well. But yeah, I'll be very surprised. For me, I think Fury wins Wilder again. I think Joshua, I do think he could beat Pulev, but again, Pulev's he can be a bit of a tricky character. But I think Joshua should come through that one. And you know, let's be fair, Anthony. The fight that just everybody wants, regardless whether there's any belts or not, is
yeah,
Joshua. That's going to be biblical, mate. Biblical.
I thought it was already signed, but I thought like it was. I thought it was already signed in principle because obviously, Guy Sports announced something a couple of months ago, and in my mind, I thought it was already, I thought it was signed in principle.
Well, I think it's been agreed in principle. I don't know if it's been signed, but then obviously you've got things like Usyk. He's not going to step aside. He wants to fight Anthony Joshua. Um, you know, there's sort of variables happy that in boxing. But I think if Joshua was to give up the belt, which I think if Usyk wins Chisora as he's expected to, and if Joshua doesn't give up the belt and then he goes up against Usyk and loses, then the Fury Joshua fight loses a bit of pizzazz. It loses a bit of fireworks. Whereas you've got this now. So even though Joshua's lost against Ruiz, he's come back. He's won against Ruiz. Yeah, I don't. It's an interesting point in boxing because this is a fight where nobody actually gives a shit about the belts. Nobody's bothered. They just want to see Tyson Fury fight Anthony Joshua. That's all. That people aren't interested in the belts. Just fight the two years.
I, I, I personally think yeah, if AJ does fight, does sorry when he does fight few level, I got I personally think AJ gonna struggle because against more technical fighters, he seems to struggle. Like when he fights people that just like to basically go in there and swing, he had a better opportunity, I think. Anyway, maybe you disagree, but
No, I think he's. So I think anybody would struggle with Ruiz. Remember, these are big guys as well. And when you've got a small, quick guy, it's like a Jack Russell barking at you. Do you know what I mean? They're just all
uh,
and you can't keep up with them. But I expect Joshua to come through. I expect Wilder to come through. Sorry, Fury to come through against Wilder, and then they've just got to fight and just get it. You know, just get it over. What I don't want is it to go like Kell Brook and Amir Khan, like years and years and years down the line, to the fact now they've got greyer beards than me, and nobody's really interested. It's like I'm not bothered if you fight or not. Like you're well past it, you know. So yeah, Tyson Fury, Joshua, it's got to happen in 2021.
to me, obviously I respect AJ, but when it comes to his boxing, I just think he's okay. Like I'm not like an AJ fanatic or anything like that. I just think he's okay as a boxer. I think he's very beatable on his day, as we saw with Andy Louise. He's
Yeah.
very beatable if you can if you can get past his power. Yeah, it's very beatable. I think anyway. Out of the two, out of the two of them, I prefer Tyson Fury as a boxer because obviously he's more agile and he's got more style to his boxing. I think AJ is very traditional in that sense.
Yeah, I would say AJ. But then again, we're going off an aesthetics perspective, you know, how muscular he looks. So AJ looks very powerful. Tyson Fury proved in the last fight against Wilder, he's powerful too. Obviously, he hasn't got the six pack and the bulging muscles and all this type of stuff. But yeah, looks can be deceptive, and I think you're right that AJ looks the more powerful out of the two. Fury looks the best boxer out of the two. Yeah, they've just got to fight, mate. Bottom line, they've just got to fight.
To, to be honest, I would put a lot of money on Fury for that one, because I think Fury could pick AJ apart quite convincingly, just by just by just by staying behind the jab and just like
Yeah.
moving around the ring. Because as we know, AJ could, when he can just stay in one place and let, let, let the fight go, but as soon as he comes around to moving around the ring, he seems to struggle a lot. At least in my opinion, anyway. Obviously. So my last question is, if you could go back in time and watch watch an interview or read anybody in particular, who would you pick?
Sorry, if I could go back in time and if I could, you only want a body language to read.
Yeah, so
All right, okay.
um,
So it would have to be just off the top of my head. If I could go back to when they were given the speech, I'll be more specific. I'll go
yeah,
back to when they were given the speech. I would love to be doing a live stream on Bill Clinton saying he never had sex with that woman. That's one of the ones where I would love to do that, where you've got the President of the United States saying, I did not have sexual relationships with Monica Lewinsky. I would love to be right in that room with him doing a live stream, commenting on his body language, because I just think that would be biblical, mate. Yeah. So Bill Clinton, when he was obviously lying, but what we all know now is true, Anthony.
good choice. My my pick would be my 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 Martin Luther King, not a fame, but I'm still convinced there was somebody there was somebody in it, there was somebody in his inner circle that knew that would happen.
Yeah.
It would all just a bit too ironic for me.
Yeah, potentially, mate. So that's where you would go, Martin Luther King. Well, you can do Martin Luther King. I'll do Bill Clinton and never compare notes.
Yeah. I I I I think that would be a good series. Like obviously it would take you a long time to do, but I think you could take somebody like Bill Clinton, yeah,
Yeah,
and also take somebody else. You can say a name. But I think it would be interesting to compare the two and see which one was more believable.
yeah, definitely, mate, 100%. But more importantly, I would like to, if I had the choice of doing anybody, it would be last Christmas asking my two daughters who nicked their daddy's chocolate selection box, because I had one selection box and it was gone by the time I
Mm.
got up, and nobody was prepared to take the blame for it.
It was for it was probably your wife.
Yeah, I just have to look for who had the chocolate or the mouth. No body language needed.
So, how, so do you know your body language? Yeah? Where, would you would you ever consider would you ever consider like probably training people, or is that not something you would like to do?
No, I mean, I've been doing that for 15 years, Anthony. I go all over the world training people in the capability to be able to understand body language signals. So it's something that I've been doing for 15 years, mate.
I I I assume you must do it with you must do it with law enforcement a lot of time then.
Do you know what? That's one area where I've done a little bit of, let's just say, pro bono work, so not paid for. But the biggest area of the work is that I do is in corporate. So for me, my body language, it's not necessarily finding out who's lying, and this always surprises people, right? Because I know, are they lying or not? I know that's the exciting part. But the stuff that I do, like contract negotiations, accident investigation, developing high performing teams, psychological trust within those teams, is that if you notice somebody's not offering what they're thinking, then that could be an inhibitor to optimizing their performance. So it's not necessarily finding out who, like, the lying bit's the exciting part. I get that, all right? I get that, especially from a YouTube perspective. But for me, it's about, well, why do they not feel safe enough to offer how they're truly feeling? Why is their words not matching up with their body language? Because when you give people psychological safety to be their authentic selves, that's when you see a lot more or a lot less of like conflicting body language. When people are telling the truth, when they can tell you how they feel, that's when you tend to see a lot of like, or a lot less of the scratch, the rub of the nose, the sort of rub of the back of the neck, all this type of stuff. And that's when people are the best versions of themselves, mate. So yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years. But for me, it's never been about finding out who's lying, or that's part of it. It's about, well, what's going on here that they're not comfortable enough to tell us how they're feeling. Because when people, you know, we talked about you before, giving constructive feedback, talking about Corona, you talked about pedophiles, talking about all this type of stuff, is that when you can have truthful, you know, rich conversations, collaborative conversations, there's a lot more progress made forward there, and body language is just part of allowing that to happen there.
Yeah, completely agree with everything that you just said. Like, the last thing I want to do to close out the interview is just to put like a devil's advocate sort of thing on. Obviously, I know this, but, but yeah, but you, but you're not, I never heard you say this is this is this is 100% the right. This is 100% the truth. You always, I think, you always present it as your opinion, and based off your experience. I've never heard you say I am 100% right. You always present it as this is my this is my opinion, and I always and I always and I always commend you for that. Because it would be easy for you to say, "Oh, I'm right," because I've had this much experience, and you don't do that, which as I say, I commend you for.
No, thank you. And again, that's part of my approach. The factual, authentic truth is that you can't tell if someone's lying or not. You can tell if they're uncomfortable, and then by the correct questioning, you can bring out an answer from them. But there's a lot of people who say, "Oh yeah, they're doing this so that," or the the eyes have looked up here, so it means that. The fact is, you can tell they've done something different, but then you've got to ask the right questions for then to they explore or offer the truth to you. And that's why I don't say it, because again, factually, I can't say that. I can't say 100%. I can't say is they look uncomfortable or it's not matching up, but I can't say that definitely someone's telling the truth, or they're lying, because you just don't know. That's where the questioning skills. So observing body language is just 50% of the game. Having the ability to ask the correct questions is the other 50%, Anthony. But I hope I've given you some food for thought, mate. Again, thank you for bringing me. I've actually really enjoyed the crack. And it's brilliant that I know that somebody actually watches my videos as well, to the extent that you do, mate. So thank you very much for having us on.
No worries, mate. I'm glad you could finally come on. And to be honest, this was an interview where I planned to do a lot of listening. As you guys could probably already know, obviously, when it comes to like body language and reading in particular, Bruce is a lot more knowledgeable. I obviously am, so I really appreciate that, Bruce, for coming on.
And if you're watching this, guys, tell your friends about Anthony. Tell your friends to subscribe. Share the news about his channel. Get it across on Twitter. Get it across on Instagram. Let's take Anthony outside his comfort zone and get him some more subscribers.
I appreciate that. So, great. Do you want to promote your Twitter or your social media?
No, mate. I want everybody to focus on you, Anthony Ward. Let's increase those subscriber rates.
Okay, so I hope you enjoy that, guys, and please like, comment and subscribe. And thank you for watching.